2018. If anyone is here for the Citizen Academy, that meeting is across the hall. This meeting is being televised on Charter Spectrum Channel 180 and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. It will air daily at 1 p.m. with additional airing on Thursday at 7 p.m. A video is available on demand on county website. Please turn off all cell phones and laptops or set them on vibrate. Anyone wishing to speak tonight, please fill out a public hearing speaking card. A total of 10 minutes will be allotted for anyone in favor of a case and 10 minutes for those speaking in opposition of a case. For example, if 10 people wish to speak, they must share the 10-minute slot. When you are speaking, please face the board and address us directly, not the audience. If you turn to speak to the audience, the board will assume you are finished and call the next speaker. We will now hear the invocation by Mrs. King.
Please stand. Gracious God and Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity tonight to come together as a community. I ask that you would give us honesty, truthfulness, and clarity in the presentations and decisions that are made tonight. Also, please, we're thinking about those who are in the path of Hurricane Florence for safety and protection, minimal damage to property, and minimal loss of life as well. Let's say the pledge together. Oh, in the name of Jesus Christ, I pray, amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do I have approval of the minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes, July 12th and July 26th. Oh, did you say agenda or minutes? I'm sorry.
The minutes. We'll get to the agenda. Go ahead. I call the meeting.
Chair.
Yeah.
One call to order and then the acceptance of the agenda.
I'm sorry. Yes. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Have a motion to approve the minutes.
I make a motion to approve the minutes of July 12th and July 26th.
I have a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Does staff have any comments?
No official comments, but I would like to take this time to welcome Mr. Brown to the Zoning Advisory Board. He was appointed by the Board of Commissioners representing the at-large chair, the chairman of the Board of Commissioners appointee. And I would also like to take this time to publicly thank Mr. Pete Peterson for his service on our Zoning Advisory Board. We sincerely appreciate him and wish him the best in his future endeavors with respect to District 4.
Okay, thank you. And welcome, Mr. Brown. Okay, at this time, we'd like to hear the first case, please.
Case number CU-18-11-H, Alfred and Sharon Wagenknecht of Hampton, Georgia, request a conditional use for property located at 230 Sandstone Drive in land lots 232 and 249 of the 6th District. The property consists of 0.425 plus or minus acres, and the request is for an accessory dwelling. This property is located in the city of Hampton and will be presented by Ms. Julia Yoder, Planner 1.
Good evening, Chair and Board.
Good evening.
Oh, there we go. The conditional use request before you this evening is a request to allow an accessory apartment on the residential property in the city of Hampton, which is allowed with an approved conditional use. Per the applicant's letter of intent, they plan to have their daughter living in the accessory apartment. The garage was built in 2005 with the house with the intent to make the garage an accessory apartment, including plumbing, sewer, and electrical connections. However, the interior was never finished. A variance request will be heard following this case regarding setbacks, which the garage does not meet under the new City of Hampton Code. With that being said, planning staff recommends approval of this request, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for staff? No questions for staff. If not, we'd like the applicant to come forward, please. Please state your name and address for the record.
Alfred Wagon Connect, 230 Sandstone Drive, Hampton, Georgia, 30228. My wife Sharon.
Okay, sir, do you have anything additional you'd like to add to staff comments?
No, like she said, the garage was, the intentional use for the garage was to be for her mother to live in if and when she needed it. She passed away before it ever really got off the ground, and we've never done anything with it. I lost my son-in-law in June to a sudden heart attack, and my daughter has asked if we can turn the garage that we were going to use for my wife's mother into small living quarters for her. And so here we are. It has been plumbed, it has electric, or rough-in plumbing, electrical connections, water service, all is already there, which was built by the builder in 2005. So that's all I have to add. I don't know if you would.
Does the board have any questions for the applicant? Mr. Richard?
Yes, sir. I just have one question.
Okay.
The permit by which these modifications were made for the accessory apartment, I guess initially, for your mother, but they've never been completed. Is that permit still active? Is that still?
I don't know, sir. It was built along with the house in 2005. It wasn't added afterwards. So it was a new subdivision, brand new house, and it came all up from the ground. So I would assume that the permits are active.
Okay, but you would have gotten some some permits to make the modifications to make it into a residential. Is that correct, or is that?
Yes, we would have a contractor
Okay.
to do the work that was needed.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Any additional questions for the applicant? No additional questions? Okay, at this time, you may be seated, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay. At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in favor of this case.
I'm Sharon Wagon Connect. I just wanted to say my daughter's only 41, and he was the breadwinner. She just worked part-time, so she can't really afford to live, anywhere else. And she will eventually get a full-time job, but it was so sudden that it just wasn't expected. So and she wants to be close to us. She does work part-time at Atlanta Motor Speedway, which is close.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm Dr. Judith Tynes-Jones, 1100 Marsh Court. I'm their neighbor, right next door. In favor for it. There are no problems. They're excellent neighbors. They bring in the trash when we're all on vacations. They cut most of the lawn. They even do some of the common areas that are away from their home. So they are excellent neighbors and really deserving to keep the family together. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else would like to speak in favor of the case? Anyone else speaking in favor of the case? We have additional time. If not, at this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in opposition of the case. If no one's coming forward, does the board have additional questions for the applicant or staff? If not, we'd like to call the case.
Case number CU-18-11-H, Alfred and Sharon Wagon Connect. Please forgive me for mispronouncing your name earlier. Of Hampton, Georgia, request a conditional use for property located at 230 Sandstone Drive and land lots 232 and 249 of the 6th District. The property consists of 0.425 plus or minus acres, and the request is for an accessory dwelling. The property is located in the city of Hampton, was presented by Ms. Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Okay, we have the case. Do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion for approval of CU 18-11-H.
Okay, have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. Okay, any discussion? No discussion. All in favor? Motion carries. Like to hear the next case, please.
Case number VR-18-09-H. Alfred and Sharon Wagon Connect of Hampton, Georgia request a variance from development standards for property located at 230 Sandstone Drive and land lots 232 and 249 of the 6th District. The property consists of 0.425 plus or minus acres, and the request is regarding an accessory dwelling. The property is located in the city of Hampton and will be presented by Ms. Julie Yoder, Planner 1.
Good evening again.
Good evening.
The variance before you this evening is being requested to eliminate certain setbacks for the accessory apartment that was discussed in the previous conditional use case. Specifically, the 40-foot rear setback and the 15-foot side setback from the western property line. Also, we've added a variance regarding architectural standards as the structure is made of wood and vinyl is no longer permitted under the new Hampton Code. The garage and house were built at the same time in 2005. The garage as it sits now is legal nonconforming, and because the applicants are applying to modify the structure and change the use of the structure, they must come into compliance with the current development standards under the new Hampton Code. With that being said, staff recommends approval, and I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Okay. Does the board have questions for staff? Ms. Consiglio?
So the requirement for the 40-foot rear setback and the 15-foot side setback is because it was just, I mean, they can't rebuild the house, right? So they're just trying to get into conformity.
Right, and
Is that
under
what
the old code,
Right.
the minimum was 3 feet.
Right.
So things have changed now.
Right.
And because they're updating the structure, they have to come into compliance with
Okay,
everything.
that just, yeah, just want to make sure. Okay.
Any additional questions for staff? Okay. If not, we'd like the applicant to come forward, please. Again, state your name and address for the record.
Alfred Wagon Connect, 230 Sandstone Drive, Hampton, Georgia, 30228.
Okay. Anything else you would like to add, Mr. Alfred?
No, sir. I think she's pretty much covered exactly what we need to have happen.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for the applicant? If not, you may be seated.
Thank you so much.
Oh, I do have a question.
I'm sorry, one question.
On the garage part, I mean, will there be a separate entrance for your daughter, or is it just she comes through the house? I mean, because garages usually have a garage door. How does that work?
Yes, it will have a separate entrance
Okay.
with a lock and all that.
Oh, yeah. That's none of my business, but I'm just kind of wondering.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Again, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in favor of this case. If anyone would like to come forward speaking in favor. Anyone speaking in opposition of the case? If you'd like to speak in favor, please come forward, state your name and address for the record, sir.
Good evening, everyone. My name is James Jones. I live at 1100 Marsh Court, right adjacent to the Wagon Connects. We've been there for a period of about 13 years. They've been outstanding neighbors. We've never had any problems with them. In fact, we love them. If we got to move, we're taking them with us. I think what they're doing is outstanding, and I would very much like for the approval. Thank you.
All right. Again, anyone, there's additional time, anyone else would like to speak in favor of the case? Do we have anyone speaking in opposition of the case? Okay, if not, does the board have any additional questions for the applicant or the staff? Okay, if no additional questions, we'd like to call the case, please.
Case number VR-18-09-H. Alfred and Sharon Wagon Connect of Hampton, Georgia request a variance from development standards for property located at 230 Sandstone Drive and land lots 232 and 249 of the 6th District. The property consists of 0.425 plus or minus acres, and the request is regarding an accessory dwelling. This property is located in the city of Hampton and was presented by Ms. Julie Yoder, Planner 2.
Okay, we've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
I'd I'd like to make a motion of approval for VR-18-09-H.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
I have a second by Mr. Richard. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor? Motion carries. Call the next case, please.
Case number VR-18-07, Carlos Green of McDonough, Georgia, requests a variance from development standards for property located at 880 Sowell Road in land lot 203 of the 7th District. The property consists of 1.75 plus minus acres, and the request is to reduce the setback requirement. This property is located, located in Commission District 1 and will be presented by Ms. Yuritsa Neves. Planner 1.
Good evening, Board and Chair and Board members.
Good evening.
This variance request is for property located at 880 Sowell Road, near the intersection of Sowell Road with South Bethany Road and King Mill Road, as highlighted in green on the screen and in your exhibit books. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the front yard setback requirement from 75 feet, as required in RA zoned property, to 51.8 feet. As shown on the site plan, there is a partially constructed home which currently sits at 51.8 feet, and the highlighted line is the required setback of 75 feet. The ULDC expressly requires all 7 criteria points to be met in order to recommend approval. Due to the applicant technically not meeting all 7 of these criteria points, staff recommends denial of the applicant's request. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for staff?
What, you mentioned 7 points or 7 items?
7 criteria points.
Just briefly, what are those?
For example, extraordinary and exceptional conditions of the property, such as topography, size, shape. This property does not have any of those conditions. It would allow the applicant rights would deprive the applicant rights commonly enjoyed by other properties of the same zoning. Will not confer the property or the applicant any special privileges. Other applicants are able to request a variance, but this is a request of 31% reduction of the front yard setback requirement. Among others, sorry.
So, the house was destroyed in 2015 by fire, and then they were reconstructing it, but according to this, they didn't have the correct permits, so they had a stop work order. When was that, do you know when they started the construction on that, and when was the stop, was that recently, the stop order?
I'm not aware.
Okay.
Perhaps the applicant would
Okay.
be able to give that information.
Just a little bit of clarity, Mr. Chair. The applicant can give you more detail as to the reason that he is here tonight and what triggered all of the variance requirements. For the record, when it comes to variances, our code is very black and white in that either you have them all or you don't. We really don't have any objective wiggle room to say if you're missing one of the criteria, we can still recommend approval. So there have been some cases to where the zoning advisory board at your discretion can hear the applicant, hear what the reasoning is, and then make a decision based on that. But staff has to be objective, and so that's why our recommendation is strictly based on the code, even though we could agree that the reason behind the need for the variance is legitimate, but the applicant would need to express that to you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, that's it. Mr. Richard?
Is this home being built by the applicant themselves, or is it being built by a builder who is supposed to be licensed through the state of Georgia?
I believe it is being constructed by a builder, but I believe the applicant could better answer that question.
Thank you.
Okay. Any additional questions for staff? If not, we'd like to ask the applicant to come forward, please. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Carlos Green, 880 Sowell Road, McDonough, Georgia.
Mr. Stream, do you have anything you'd like to add to staff recommendation?
Yes. We ran into a problem. The house burnt down in 2015, and where the foundation is where the foundation to the old house was. Outside of the engineer spoke to inspections, they told us that it was 75 feet from the edge of the curve to the structure, which we met that. However, we had a contractor, he never pulled the permit, even though the engineer signed off on the foundation, that we did not meet the requirements after I met with planning. It's 75 feet from the middle of the road. So basically what was explained to me is that the code changed from 50 to 75 feet. So basically it would take the right side of the house, which is the garage area and probably halfway down the house, would have to be set back with the structure already being up to meet that code. But prior to the foundation going back up from the original, from 1928, it was explained that it was from the edge of the road. Now, we had a meeting at inspections. They admitted to planning that they gave us false information. So I'm asking if we can get the variance because we've been given false information on the structure of the foundation going back up.
Okay. Now, does the board have additional questions for the applicant?
Yes, I have some questions, Mr. Green.
Yes.
I went by your house,
Yes, sir.
and the foundation, it looks new to me.
Yes. It's new because I tore the old house down. It had a fire there. So that house was built in 1928.
Okay, so the blocks are
Yes.
new.
Yes,
You just put those on the original footings.
Yes, what they did is they added to it because we were told it was 75 feet from the edge of the road. That's not true.
Okay, well, so you tore down the original
Yes, sir.
foundation.
Yes, sir.
And you built it back
Yeah, yes, just made
on the
it bigger.
existing footings where it was.
Yes.
Okay, well, let me ask, I guess I'm confused about the inspection.
Okay.
And I'm just gonna be frank, I understand your situation, but we have permits and building codes for all of the right reasons. You know, the electrical and fires and just all of those things for to go through the processes. And we have some great people that work in all this. So when I hear you say inspection, is that a county person?
Okay, we hired someone to deal with the foundation. They were responsible for getting the permits and everything. I knew nothing what was going until I got a phone call that the inspectors was at the residence. So I came downtown. They explained to me that that company never pulled a permit. At that point, I said, well, I'm going to supersede over everything. I asked what was the codes. They told me that I had to get an engineer to come down there and look at the foundation, which that happened. He said the foundation was fine. They told me then, in reference to the rest of the permits that were going to be needed, that it was 75 feet from the edge of the road. So I put in the paperwork for all the permits. This is where we got the block when they said that the house was too close to the street.
In my discussions with the building department, after meeting Mr. Green, I went directly to them to find out exactly what happened.
Just a little, Deontay, I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
All right, so with respect to the contractor that was working on the home, there was an original foundation. The new foundation enhances that or expands. So based on vested rights, or when the property burns down, or they want to, or anyone wants to replace a property in the same context or same situation, if they increase the size, if they expand, then they have to comply with current regs. Now, unfortunately, whomever the contractor was did not go through the proper channels here in the county to go through the review, so we could have caught this on the front end. What happened was work was done, and then I can't remember if it was code enforcement or an inspector, but an inspector visited the site, saw that the foundation encroached into the setbacks, whereas the old foundation did not. So because of that, they had to issue a stop work order. The stop work order halted Mr. Green from completing his home, and so that's where we came in and realizing that a variance is now needed. At no fault of his own, it was technically the contractor who did not follow protocol. So that's why we are technically where we are.
So you hired a contractor
Yes, sir.
to take care of all of this,
Yes,
and it's clear he didn't do that.
yes.
You said from the edge of the road. Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, I guess the bottom line with all of this is you hired a contractor that didn't do his job, and now you're paying the price for it, I guess.
Yes, I'm paying the price, but the problem was that had it been from the middle of the road, from the edge of the road, 75 feet was, I guess, what was explained to me, we would have had a whole lot more time to make the changes. Months have went by.
Who explained that to you? I guess
That would have been the zoning department for Henry County, the inspector. He told me, he spoke to my attorney, he spoke to the engineer, and told all of us that it was 75 feet from the edge of the road. However, it is not.
name? I mean, who was that? I'm just trying to, I don't want to get into all of it. I'm just.
That's a personnel matter, so let's not get into names.
You're right. I just want, my clarification is someone from the county met with you and told you that. That's all I'm trying to.
Yes, sir.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, that is a matter that's personnel related,
Yeah,
so.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Question, Ms. Consiglio?
Do you know in the state of Georgia that contractors have to be licensed?
I found that out.
For residential.
You know, just to give you a little background, we're from North Carolina, Jacksonville, which right now we don't know if we're going back to a house because of the hurricane is hitting right where we live. And the purpose of this home was to get it up with my mom and my dad is elderly, and we were moving to Georgia. So we were finding out a lot of things now.
So I just want to get some dates for clarification for my own benefit, and then I'll just want to just mention that it says you have a new contractor, and do you have the license number of the new contractor?
We don't have a new contractor. I'm superseding because this won't happen nowhere else dealing with this house. I've done my homework now.
Okay. So
I'll be hiring the contractors on different various, if I'm able to continue building, to make sure everything is in order, and not just writing a check and assuming everything is right. Because I wouldn't have known anything if I did not get the phone call.
Okay, so you're going to be maybe the general contractor then
Yes,
over the
ma'am.
project? Okay. So then you can sub everything out. All
Yes,
right.
ma'am.
So that's a good thing to know. And you're allowed to do that without a license because you're going to be the one that's living there. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you pay that other contractor?
Yes, ma'am. The attorney is trying to find out the numbers disconnected now. I passed that on to inspections, and they told me they would see what they could do to find out, but.
Well, maybe if we can find out who they are, they won't be allowed to work in this county anymore. Well, especially if they don't have a license, because they have to have a license to do that type of work. So, so when did you start building? Was it 2000? Because it burned in 2015. So when did you start building? 20?
The present house is, I want to say maybe April or May. Yes, ma'am.
That's when the other guy started building?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. Wow. Oh, that's all I have.
Any additional questions? Yeah, Mr. Richard.
Okay, after the foundation situation was found that it didn't meet the 75-foot setback, did the builder continue building anyway in violation of a stop work order?
No, sir. Everything, when the inspectors came out there, the frame was already up. The only thing wasn't on was the roof. So at that point, we found out, they sat with me and told me everything that needed to be done. And this is what stopped us once we found out it was not 75 feet from the curb, that I had to, file for a variance.
Okay, well, actually, it's 75 feet from the
Right-of-way.
edge of the right-of-way.
Yes, sir.
And And I think Sowell Road is a 60-foot right-of-way, which means that the right-of-way starts
middle
at
of the
30
road.
feet from the center of the road.
Yes, sir.
Under most situations. Just, bear in mind that, that it's possible that one day that road, as well as King Mill Road, may have some major improvements which may encroach the roadway and the right-of-way even closer, to your home than it apparently is now. So just as a point of information. So, is the builder from this area, or
He
is
was
someone
from,
from
he was
North
out of the Atlanta area.
How did you find the builder?
Say it again, ma'am.
How did you find that builder?
He was referred for someone else that we knew down in Atlanta, and they said everything would work fine. That they were, sometimes when you try to save $1, you spend 10, and this is that case.
Any additional questions? Okay. Mr. Green, I have a question for you now, just for
Sure.
clarification. Did he go back to the original footprint, or did he expand beyond that original?
He expanded back onto the property and to the left of the property.
He expanded back.
Yes, back into the property. So I have plenty of land in the back. And then he expanded to the left, but the left part of the house is not really in question because the way the house is, as you see, it goes on an angle. So the left side of the house meets the 75 feet. It's more from the front door to the garage.
Okay. And just a question for staff. Now, was that part of the original footprint?
I'm not aware.
Dante, can-
One of the inspectors, because that's what they go out and look for.
Okay. I got you.
But basically, the addition encroaches into the
Oh,
setbacks.
okay, all right. So, and maybe I missed it in here. What's the variance distance that you're requesting, Mr. Green?
I believe it's a little under 24 feet for that side, because it's not the actually complete house, it's just the right side where the garage to the front door, pretty much like half the house.
Okay, I got you. Okay, all right. I have another question, Mr. Richard?
On your plat, it shows a proposed septic tank. Was the builder going to try to use the original septic tank on this property?
No,
Because-
sir, and the builder didn't have any, this is stuff that I found afterwards, so I found a septic tank company that pulled, that deal with the permit, and they're putting a new system in.
Okay, because let's see, this is what, a 3 or 4 bedroom home?
Yes, it's 4 bedrooms, and just speaking with the officials, they thought it would be best that I put new leaf lines in and a new system, so that's, what I opted to do.
Okay, but did the builder get a permit from the environmental health?
No, he
department?
didn't. I went down, and Adams Septic Tank out of McDonough was the one contracted to do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Does the board have any additional questions for the applicant? Okay, if no questions, you may be seated, sir. At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in favor of this case. Anyone else that would like to speak in favor of this case? Please state your name and address for the record.
Georgette Wingate, 1680 King Mill Road, McDonough, Georgia. I'm right next door. I end King Mill and he starts south. I've watched this man go through a lot. He inherited this property. He took that little shack, tore it down to studs, rebuilt it. It was vandalized. Broke his heart, broke my heart, didn't let that get to him, rebuilt it again, and then to see it get burned down by an electrical fire. So to see him have to go through this again, it just seems so unfair. I'm right next door. He's been a wonderful neighbor. I've watched him try so hard to follow all the rules, and it seems whatever he does, he's getting stopped, and it's just, It doesn't bother me where the house is, and like I said, I'm right next door to him. So I just pray that you people would show some mercy on this man, the money that he's already invested in this foundation, and how far he's already gone. To have to start it all over again just doesn't seem fair, doesn't seem right. And as a neighbor, I'm for you allowing him to have this variance and to go forward and build this home for him and his elderly parents. I'd appreciate your consideration for him. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We have additional time. Anyone else would like to speak in favor of the case?
I'm Kyle Tew. I live over on 860 Old Jackson Road. I'd also like to talk in favor or so forth. The board is kind enough about 10 years ago to allow variance on our property so that my parents could build a house next to me. And so we've had some great years, having some great, my parents' neighbors and so forth. I do pass by this property typically on my way back and forth to work every day. And I've noticed the work they've done. And of course, like they mentioned, they have most of the framing up and so forth. I totally understand that there are rules and regulations, but I would greatly encourage the members to see if there's a resolution for this so that they may move forward. And once again, I'd like to thank you for the variance that y'all gave us, about 10 years ago over on 860 Old Jackson Road. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We have additional time. Anyone else would like to speak in favor of this case? Okay. No one like to speak in favor. We'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in opposition of the case. Okay. No one speaking in opposition. Does the board have any additional questions for the applicant or staff? Okay. Well, if the board, I have one question for staff. And I understand we have variances for a reason, but do we have it? Do you see any potential problem in terms of where this is located or any future problems that this may inquire?
At this point, no. I don't foresee any issues.
Okay. All right. If there's no additional questions, we'd like to call the case.
Case number VR-18-07. Carlos Green of McDonough, Georgia, requests a variance from development standards for property located at 880 Sowell Road and land lot 203 of the 7th District. The property consists of 1.75 plus or minus acres, and the request is to reduce the setback requirement. This property is located in Commission District 1 and was presented by Ms. Yuritsa Neves, Planner 1.
Okay. We've heard the case. Do we have a motion?
This time I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance for Mr. Green, VR 18-07.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Yes, I'd like to say.
Yes, we have a second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Call the next case, please.
Case number VR-18-10. Crown Castle of Atlanta, Georgia, requests a variance from development standards for property located at 566 Trestle Road and land lot 176 of the 2nd District. The property consists of 3.85 plus or minus acres, and the request is to modify landscape requirements and reduce setback requirements. This property is located in Commission District 1 and will be presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rootsil, Chief Planner.
Good evening, Mr. Chair.
Good evening.
Board members. The case before you tonight is a piece of property on Trestle Road. It's illustrated on the overhead and also in your exhibit books. It's outlined in green here. You may notice that this property is landlocked and has no deeded acreage out to Trestle Road. So that's one of the issues that we'll go over in this hearing. So there's an existing cell tower that is on the subject property, and it's very difficult to see from this aerial, so I will exhibit the site plan. So if you'll notice this rectangular shape here, which corresponds to the rectangular nature of the subject property, but please notice that the actual lease area for the cell tower itself is a 70 by 70 foot compound that is within that rectangular shaped subject property. So don't think that the whole subject property is the cell tower compound, because it's not. It's located toward the center of the subject property. The existing cell tower is 182 feet tall, and in this diagram, it's located toward the center of the compound, which is toward the center of the subject property. They're requesting to replace this tower because they've amended it, they've made improvements to it, but it cannot be improved anymore. So it needs to be replaced. The replacement tower is proposed to be here, which is this circle that's indicated toward the right of this schematic. And you may not be able to tell it, but it's about 15 feet to the side and about 10 feet below the existing location of the tower. So the code allows for staff to administratively approve a replacement tower within certain conditions. So the problem with an administrative approval for the replacement tower is that the existing tower is technically non-conforming, and it's non-conforming in a couple of different ways. For example, at 182 feet in height, it exceeds the height limitation for today's code of 150 feet in the RA zoning district. Also, the landscape compound, or the landscape strip around the compound, is only 5 feet wide. Today's code requires 15 feet. Also, in addition to evergreen trees, there is a requirement for evergreen shrubs, and only the evergreen trees are proposed within the landscape strip. Also, the setback for the tower in today's code is required to equal the height of the tower, which means the setback should be 182 feet, but it's not. It's only 150 feet. So the tower is non-conforming in a couple of different ways, and we had already mentioned the fact that this lot has no frontage, which is also a requirement of the code. So in the case that a tower to be replaced is non-conforming, the ordinance says that if the applicant will mitigate that nonconformity in at least 2 of 4 possible ways that staff can move forward administratively. So these 4 different ways would include making a lighted tower not lighted, and this tower is not lighted, so check 1 out of the 4. But the others are at least a 10% reduction in the height, and the applicants, that doesn't fit with their plan. With the elevation of the land and the co-locations that they have, they're not able to reduce the height of the tower by 10%. Also, a change of design that achieves a more preferred style, for example, a concealed monopine, if you will, the fake trees and so forth like that, and that's not something that they're proposing. Also, exceeding the current code requirements for setbacks. And we know that's one of the ways that they actually are non-conforming. So this tower is proposed to be 15 feet closer to the property line instead of exceeding the current code requirements, which is technically 182 feet. So they're coming before you for a variance to allow them to move forward with administrative approval for a replacement tower in these various ways. So staff has evaluated the applicant's request, and what we found was interesting. The code actually allows for a reduction in the landscaping requirement if there is additional screening. And what we found, according to the schematics that are a part of your exhibit books, there's actually a proposal for a wooden privacy fence around the compound. And if that's something that will be provided and maintained, staff has no problem recommending approval, reducing the landscaping requirement to reduce the width of the strip from 15 feet to 5 feet, and to eliminate the shrub requirement because the applicant is proposing to have the evergreen trees. Also, the code specifically allows for the applicant to provide an engineer's letter saying that the setback doesn't have to be the full height of the tower. In other words, the fall zone is not the full height of the tower. And the applicant did provide such an engineer's letter. And what it says is at the 100-foot elevation of the replacement tower that it is designed, if it's going to fail, it will bend. And the top 82 feet will actually hang. And so the fall zone for this tower doesn't have to be 182 feet. And in fact, the setback that's proposed for the location of the new replacement tower is 139 feet. So it exceeds the fall zone of the tower according to the engineer's letter. So staff has no objection to recommending approval of the variance to reduce the setback requirement in that fashion. Also, we've noted that this tower has been 182 feet since it was approved so many years ago. We don't have any objection to recommending approval for the height of the tower. Also, the fact that the property is landlocked is not the fault of the applicant. And so we have no objection to recommending approval of the variance to eliminate the frontage requirement for this landlocked piece of property, because that is not in the power of the applicant to correct. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Okay, I want to open it up to the board, but first of all, Stacey, I do have a question, and that is that have you made this proposal to the applicant, and based on that, could you have given an administrative variance?
No, that is not something administratively that we can do. And because they did not meet these stipulations for a replacement tower in the code, it necessitated them coming before the board to be approved for these variances. And if the board sees fit to give that variance, then we can continue to move forward with the administrative process to approve this replacement tower.
Okay, all right, thank you. So does the board have questions for the applicant? For staff? Ms. Consiglio.
I'm sorry. If it's landlocked, how do they get the tower on there? And how are they planning on building a new tower if they can't get to the land?
Okay, so that's an excellent question.
Oh, I'm glad.
And this schematic is in your exhibit books, and if you'll follow along with me, this rectangular portion is actually the deeded lot. But this access strip here is an easement. So I believe it's a 30-foot easement to cross their neighbor's property to access the subject property. And this has been the access for this property since the tower was built. And I was able to speak with the owner of this property, and that owner is present and may choose to speak if she chooses. So we may get even further information about that. But the answer to your question is that there is an access easement.
Okay, and then my next question is, how close, when they move it, to the next piece of property, and is there anything on that property?
Okay, so
let me
there
see, like, the overall, go back to the, like, the where it's, looks like, where there's neighbors and things like that?
Right. So
Yeah.
the aerial would seem to indicate that there is some development on these 4 lots that actually have frontage on Trestle Road. And if we go back to our site plan, you can see the rectangular subject property you can see the rectangular compound within which the tower and the tower structures are maintained. Almost in the center of the tower compound is the existing tower, and the replacement tower is proposed to be 15 feet closer to the property line.
Can you go back to that aerial photo?
Yes.
And so, can you show me where the new, kind of on there, where the new tower is going to be?
This is zoomed so far out, it would be so difficult to see, but there is a light place there within this subject property. And that, the location of the replacement tower is 139 feet away from the neighbor's property.
From the edge of the property?
Right, that is correct.
Okay. But it's 15 feet closer?
Yes, ma'am,
Right,
that is
right,
correct.
right, okay. And did you have any of those neighbors, did you guys get any objections to that when you announced that they were going to do that?
In accordance with our procedures, we posted the subject property, we sent postcards to the neighbors. I received a response from the neighbor across whose property the easement falls, but I did not speak with any of the neighbors on these 4 tracks that have frontage on Trestle Road, and I'm not aware that any of the planners had any calls about that as well.
And the other question is there a fence around it now, or is it just shrubs?
It's my understanding that there is a fence around it, and according to the designs, the schematics that are in your exhibit books and that was submitted by the applicant, they're proposing a wooden privacy fence.
An 8-foot wooden privacy fence. Is that what?
I'll need to confirm that,
Okay.
but it's here in the exhibits, and as soon as I find it, I can confirm that.
Any additional questions for staff? Okay. At this time, we'd like the applicant to come forward, please. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Andy Rotenstrike. I'm here on behalf of Crown Castle. This is Debbie Saws here on behalf of Crown Castle as well. Stacy did a very good job of introducing what we're proposing to do. The bottom line is this. This tower was built around 20 years ago. At the time, we obtained approval from this board to build it, and we met all the requirements of the board and the ordinance at that time. Since that time, a new ordinance has come into place. The tower is a non-conforming use now, and the tower is stretched to its limits. We have 4 carriers on the tower now. We're looking, a 5th carrier has approached us to put equipment on there. In order to avoid building a 2nd tower, either on this property or the parent track, we're trying to put that carrier on this tower as well, but this tower is such an age that it will not hold it structurally. So what we're proposing to do is build a new structure that will hold all 5 carriers, and then once that tower is built and on air with all 5 carriers, we will then remove this tower. So at the end of the day, you'll still only have 1 tower. It'll be 15 feet closer to that side of the compound. The compound, we're kind of limited on space, which requires the need for the landscaping variance. In order to try and rectify that, we proposed the wood fence that Stacy mentioned to try and alleviate any concerns there. We did present the engineer's letter. So with the letter that has been presented and signed by a licensed Georgia engineer, the fall zone now remains on our landlord's property. The fall zone now does not extend to the 4 neighbors' property. So we think we've done everything we can. This tower is going to look exactly the same as it does now. We're just trying to not build a 2nd tower, which we could do at 150 feet, but we're just trying to not do that.
Okay. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does the board have any additional questions for the applicant? Ms. Consiglio.
So I'm looking at the site plan here. So are you saying you're going to get rid of all the shrubberies, or there's going to be a fence and then there's going to be trees in front of that?
So right now, we have a chain link fence around the compound today. We would add a wooden fence on the outside of the chain link fence. So looking from the outside, you'd see the wood. The requirement is for trees and shrubs. We've proposed trees. We certainly can add shrubs, but we only have 5 feet, not 15, because we don't have any lease area left. So that's our dilemma.
Okay, and then, let me ask you this, with the addition of the other, carriers, how many carriers did you say you wanted to add?
5. There'll be one more.
There'll be
There's
one more,
4
so-
there now.
Okay,
4 spots taken on the tower.
okay, so, I'm gonna try to say this. So the tower as it exists today, you have 4 carriers. And then there's nothing wrong with that tower. It's just that you wanna add an additional carrier, and that's why you have to build this new one.
The additional equipment will cause the tower to fail structurally. In other words, it will take it over 100% of its capacity. Therefore, we've already beefed it up as much as we can, and so our alternative now is to either A, not put the additional equipment on there, leave it as is, which is fine, and build a second tower, or put a stronger tower there to today's standards and put everybody on one pole.
And you say you'd be okay with shrubs?
Yes, we can add the shrubs. We'd be happy
I'm
to
just,
do that.
well, because kids, you know,
Sure.
I'm just thinking of, you know, how kids like to get into things they're not supposed to get into, and I'm just talking, it's a safety thing. and
That makes
a de-
perfect sense.
a
Quite frankly,
deterrent.
when he said that, I was looking at the plans. I was like, why did we not put shrubs, bushes on there?
Yeah,
So
and
we're happy
I'm a
to do that.
shrub and bush person, and everybody knows that, so I'd like to see that
Sure.
if District 2 would allow it, but, yeah, okay. That makes him a little bit happy, a little bit.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
I do have one question.
Yes, sir.
You were speaking about the fall zone. You said the top 82 feet will collapse. What happens if that particular feature fails on the tower? How far will it extend to the owner's property that are adjacent to this?
It will remain within the green box. It will not go onto the neighbor's property. Because it's 130 feet, I believe, or maybe it'll be 115 with the 15-foot movement. There'll be enough space within the green box in that photo for it to remain on that property.
Even if the top portion does not collapse onto itself? Is that what you're saying?
Right. What happens is I actually have a straw that I can use as a demonstration.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm saying if that feature fails to collapse like you say it will not extend onto the owner's property.
Well, maybe part of it might, but much of it, even if it doesn't do what the engineers are designing it to and what it will be built to do, then yes, some of it may go onto the backside of one of those lots, but much of it will be within the green box.
You do not have an estimation of how much of it?
Well, it's 182 feet, and I believe it's 130 feet to the property line, so the top 50 feet. But again, you know, this thing is strongest at its base because it goes 30 to 40 feet down into the ground. So in the unlikely event that something were to happen, it would happen at the top where it's tapered and it has more stress there. And it'd be designed to bend over itself, not fall like a tree.
And if I may, the ordinance does require an engineer's letter to confirm that, and the applicant did provide the engineer's letter. And if I may, Mr. Chair, page C7 illustrates the 8-foot privacy fence.
Okay. Back to your question. There's nothing on the back of these lots anyway, is there? I can't see it from the picture.
I am not aware of a residence being within 50 feet of the back property lines of those neighboring properties. It's here.
That's a more recent Google Earth map. I don't know if you might could zoom in more on that, but that was the same question I had, Mr. Barr. We make sure there wasn't anything on the backs of those properties, but we still, under the ordinance, needed the letter and needed to design the tower as we've designed it. And so since the ordinance allowed us to do that, we got the letter and designed it that way.
Ms. Consiglio, you have additional questions?
So, is this the only place that you could put that other tower? You couldn't go like, I mean, on other parts of it? Is this the best place on that piece of property?
That's all we have rights to, is that tiny square.
Well, I knew that, the tiny square, so, I guess I'm looking, okay, so, can you point, on that square, can you point to where the tower is now? Because it was hard for them to, well, your ink pen's covering it over.
Yeah, sorry.
So,
That
but
little
see,
silver area is
yeah,
the
yeah,
compound.
That's, okay, and so it's moving up, so you got all this, looks like you got a whole bunch of room like in the back.
Well, the landowner does, we don't. We have to stay within the 70 by 70. That's all we have rights to.
Oh, so
That's
you
why
don't have
the
that whole-
applicant has got the hardship here.
Oh, okay, all right.
And I guess that leads to my question. Have you requested any additional rights to the applicant's land?
We haven't. I don't know if we don't have any rights to it. Our lease has been in place. It'd require a new lease if they were willing to do it.
Okay, and I have one more question.
Okay.
How come you don't want a mono tree?
There's not one there now. I think what's there now, people are used to seeing. You know, we use monopines quite often and quite effectively when we're building 80, 90, 100-foot poles surrounded by 80, 90-foot trees. They blend in well, but when you do a 180-foot tree next to 70, 80-foot trees, it looks like a giant bottle scrubber. It's going to be more obtrusive with all of the extra limbs coming out. The other thing is those limbs and those needles add weight. So we could not accomplish what we're trying to do, which is put 5 carriers on one pole. That's the other issue from a structural standpoint.
That's all I have. I promise, I don't have any more questions.
Okay, I do have one additional question. Now, if for some reason you had to build an additional tower, what proximity would it be here, or have you looked into the rights of another for additional tower?
We haven't. I mean, we were hoping that this would be the simplest and easiest and best process, is to still have one tower at the end of the day. So we would have to meet the ordinance, but we can build one at 150 feet with, you know, the fencing and the landscaping and all those things.
Right.
We would try and build it somewhere close by. It may not even be able to be on that same property.
Okay.
We'd have to find a landowner willing to lease a space.
Right. Okay, all right, thank you. Any additional questions for the applicant? If not, you may be seated, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in favor of the variance. 10 minutes for anyone that would like to speak in favor of the variance. Okay. If no one's coming forward, we'd like to allot 10 minutes for anyone speaking in opposition. Please state your name and address for the record, and if there is additional speakers, there's a total of 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Crail, 935 Oglethorpe Avenue, Southwest, Atlanta, Georgia. And I am the adjacent property owner, or one of them. Now, the question I have, and I have a plat here of my property, which was purchased in 2006. And when that property was purchased, this is the L-shaped piece that's going to be to the north of the green box. When that property was purchased in 2006, there is a 30-foot section of strip of land that runs along the property line that was deeded to the owner of the original property the tower's on. And could I place this over here, please?
Please, no problem.
There is deeded access of 30 feet that runs all the way back to that tower. It's, when we cut the property off from the original 17.67 acres, I believe, that's about an acre's worth of access back to the property that Mr. Bradley, who is where the tower actually sits on his property, owns. We don't own it. Mr. Bradley does. And we speak in opposition because two things. Is the access is there, but the people that own the tower continue to use our property to access that tower. They don't use the 30 feet. They have deeded access to that tower, but they don't use it. And my concern is how are they going to get the equipment they're going to get back there on a deeded 30-foot access to install a new tower And especially in a corner such as this, where they're already, as you can see from their drawing, they're already exceeding the property line. They've drawn this as a 40-foot easement. It's a 30-foot easement. So a lot of this road that they're currently using, this path that they're currently using to get back to the tower, actually sits on our property. Mr. Bradley, who owns the original property, sold us this property in 2006. And he had to make sure that he had access to that tower when he did so. So he kept 30 foot of access all the way back to that tower. That tower is not landlocked. Never has been. Now, whether there was some issues, my understanding is that they need a 60-foot frontage now to construct additional tower back there, which they don't have. But they do have a 30-foot frontage back there that is deeded. I guess the biggest concerns that we have, as being the other property owner, is that Crown Castle hasn't approached us at all, and we've had issues with them in the past, using our property for turnovers, turnarounds, using our property to move trucks through without permission. So it's our intent to ask them to cease and desist using our property, period, because they have deeded access back there. That's our big concern. The tower doesn't concern us. It's how are they going to construct a new tower without crossing over on our property when they have access to their own. I think that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anyone else would like to speak in opposition of? We have additional time. Okay. If no one else would like to speak in opposition, do we have additional questions for the applicant? Okay. Applicant, come forward, please.
Yes, I'd like to know what your response is to this gentleman's issue about his property being trespassed.
Well, first of all, this is the first we've heard of it, that I have heard of it, and that Ms. Sauls, who works for Crown Castle, has heard of it, and we will address that with the landowner. We should not be off of our easement or our property. If that's something we're doing, we need to fix that, and we will. That is not a zoning issue. That's an issue for the property owners, but certainly we do not intend to be on his property, and we will make sure that we're not.
Would you mind if this board sees fit to approve it, would you mind if we added that as a condition that your access be relocated to stay within the easement area that's there for access?
We would not mind that at all.
Any additional questions for the applicant?
Have it for staff.
Okay.
Or for the.
Just for the record.
Yes, please.
Regarding the easement and access on the easement, an issue between the property owners, that is technically civil. So we cannot govern or condition civil matters.
Mr. Risher, I'll tell you from our standpoint, we will get with the neighbor and make sure we're fixing that.
I will not ask that to be a condition, but I'm sure that you'll do the right thing with the property owner, I would hope. So.
Yes, sir. If not, he'll let us know through his lawyer, and staff will also let us know.
Well, that was going to be my question is, how can you build something if you're landlocked? You know what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like, how are you going to get back there? Is it like helicopter? What are you going to do?
Well, I was understanding that we had an easement, but
Okay.
he's showing a survey that says we have the deed to that 30-foot access.
Right.
That is how we should be using it, and that's
Right.
how we will be using it,
Okay.
and we are not allowed to be off of that.
Okay.
It shows on their plat that is a 30-foot access and utility easement. I think that's in your.
That's typically the case.
Mm-hmm. So
that's why I went with that.
That should be adequate, for
Yes, sir.
Trucks and construction equipment.
Yes, sir. But I'd like to say thank you, Dante. I do agree that this is totally a civil matter and beyond the scope of this board. Does the board have any additional questions for the applicant or staff? None? Okay, you may be seated, sir. If there is no additional question, we'd like to call the case.
Case number VR-18-10, Crown Castle of Atlanta, Georgia, requests a variance from development standards for property located at 566 Trestle Road in Land Lot 176 of the 2nd District. The property consists of 3.85 plus or minus acres, and the request is to modify landscape requirements and to reduce setback requirements. This property is located in Commission District 1 and was presented by Mr. Stacy Jordan Rootsil, Chief Planner.
Okay. We have heard the case. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'd like a motion to approve with the exception of adding the bushes in addition to the evergreens.
We have a motion by Mr. Risher. Do we have a second?
Yeah, a second. I didn't hear the bushes from Vicky.
Would you like to amend your motion, Mr. Richard?
Okay, amend it to what now?
To adding the shrubbery.
Yeah, if that's agreeable with staff, yes, I'll amend it.
Okay. Will you give us that motion, Mr. Richard?
I make a motion to approve the conditional use request for the tower with the addition of landscape as presented by this board.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay. I believe that concludes our cases. Motion to amend, to adjourn?
Motion.
So be it.